Just a couple of weeks left before the winter's pilot project to provide emergency shelter to women at the McNabb Street YWCA comes to a conclusion. To tell us more about the program, we're joined by Hamilton Out of the Cold Executive Director, and that is Glenn Lehman. Glenn, wait, here I am, the 40-year pro. Remember the man's name, for crying out loud. Welcome to City Matters.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share our story.
So the context would be, we have an awful lot of women going through an awful lot of traumatic occurrences who end up on the street. We know there are very few beds. We know the Good Shepherd has does great service. We know the agencies throughout the city who are anti-poverty agencies do what they basically can to help those women in need. This pilot project, where does it come from? What's the genesis of this?
The genesis really twofold, I would say. The Women's Housing Planning Collaborative had identified that need that you certainly just eloquently alluded to. And then secondly, our volunteers. We serve dinners at 10 different church locations throughout the city of Hamilton. So our volunteers were providing feedback to our board of directors that they were encountering dinner guests that were leaving and departing from our dinners and having no place to go, and were in need of some overnight shelter space or a warm, safe place to be for the, especially in the cold winter months when we serve our dinners. So that really identified the need for us as is there something we can do to help with this situation. So then our board, in conjunction with the Women's Housing and Planning Collaborative, sat down and started thinking about some options that we might be able to provide some assistance there. And the YWCA was gracious enough to step forward with some space, and then we provided some funding to help with the staffing to essentially create what was called an overflow space for women's shelters in the city when they were at capacity. So.
Now, and I know more about the feeding program, the church program, where everyone is welcome. There's no means test to go to Emmanuel on the mountain or
exactly.
And why am I having a brain lock on Concession Street?
St. Stephen on the Mount?
St. Stephen on the Mount. I mean, I only brought an event to it and I can't remember it. St. Stephen on the Mount got involved a couple of years ago. The pastor there is a terrific fellow.
Excellent.
Same at Emmanuel, and it's throughout the city. And out of the cold, those meals, the volunteers are just incredible folks. They love doing this kind of thing. So I'm circling around getting back to the beds, but talk more about that and the growth of the churches that have gotten involved.
Well, we certainly, as you just said, we could not exist without volunteers. There are 2 part-time paid staff members, myself and an office administrator, and then we have some 400 volunteers which allow us to provide this wonderful meal service program to the most vulnerable members of this community here. We could not function also without the graces of the churches that you have just mentioned that allow us to go in and utilize their space. Partners like Lococo's and Fortino's that provide food donations, and certainly the community at large that provides financial donations, which we then turn into shopping dollars to provide food for everyone. And really the hallmark of our operation has always been to treat everyone with dignity and respect and treat them as a guest. So we would be considered very low barrier in this environment. We don't ask for proof of hardship. It's a very welcoming, safe environment for someone to come in and have a meal. So
yeah, because the goal is obviously it's about friendship in some cases.
Exactly.
You're going to meet somebody who might be able to be supportive of your situation. It's great for seniors to go out and meet new people, and so the whole concept of the meals is a wonderful thing. But coming back to, I guess, the main issue, which I took us away from. That's my prerogative, right?
You're the host.
So Glenn, I mean, I think everybody knows the great work the YW does in this community. We just had the Women's Awards dinner the other night. Some fantastic female leaders in our community, and one of those is Denise Christopherson. So for her to open up the gym and provide more spaces is very important, because we know there are a dearth of spaces in the community.
In the community, certainly. And they are, of course, administering the program. We provided some funding, but they certainly are executing and administering the program. So our latest update, we had 85 unique women that have been able to utilize this overflow space. So some of those women potentially might have been barred from some of the other shelter facilities in the city, which is another issue into and of itself. And those bans are typically lifted during cold alerts, but during the other cold evenings when it's not below their threshold temperature, we had this group of women that needed a place to go, so we were happy to be able to provide some funding to have the staffing there. And it's not only a safe space, they also have the opportunity to receive some counseling and guidance for other alternative programs that are going on in the city as well. So,
Carol Ann's Place is the name of the program. Is it filling the gap, or do we have to do a lot more in Hamilton?
I think from some conversations which I've recently had with Deirdre Pike, who I believe is going to be coming on shortly after me, the pilot program
She's in the green room as we speak.
Hello, Deirdre. We certainly have sort of started scratching the surface and providing a service that is much, much needed. My initial thoughts on that, and I am not an expert in the shelter field certainly, but I would suggest there needs to be some real long-term strategies here to fix and address this issue. And I would be, suggesting that our community leaders at federal and provincial and certainly city levels need to recognize that this is a huge, huge issue in our community. And it's, to me, on a personal level, we're very gratified and happy to be able to have helped the number of women that we have this season, but it's also certainly tragic on many levels of why does this need still exist in 2017? So.
And with a poverty rate running now around 19%, we know that 1/5 of Hamilton's population, despite all that is good that is going on in our city, the real estate heat up, all of those things, cranes in our downtown. When you're talking about 1 in 5 in our city, do not know where the next meal is or where they're going to get a bed tonight. Are they couch surfing throughout the community, trying to find a warm place? We know we still have significant problems. Now, I mentioned the awards dinner the other night and leaders, and I think there's a story behind where the name Carol Ann's Place came from.
There is a great story. Our founder for the Hamilton Out of the Cold, which was founded in 1997, is Sister Carol Ann Gay, who is a retired teacher, but also a sister from the Sisters of St. Joseph's. And wonderful, wonderful lady. I had the great privilege during my first week of work to sit down and have lunch with her at the Mother House, and just a very spirited, passionate supporter for those that are less fortunate in our community, and just a wonderful, I can't say enough wonderful things about her. But the YWCA was kind enough when we started talking about this proposal and putting it together that they thought it would be a real nice touch to name it Carol Ann's Place. So that is what they did, and she was truly humbled and honored. I escorted her there at the start of our serving season and looked at the facility, and she was just so humbled and touched to have had it named after her. So wonderful legacy of service in this community, so it's very, very deserving. So. Yeah,
and you know what? I'm going to look into the camera. I'm talking to my producer right now, and I'm going, before all of the agencies we now have came into being or were put in place, the Sisters of St. Joseph were one of the bedrocks in the anti-poverty fight, going back literally to their establishment. That has been their goal and their mission in Hamilton, and sometimes we forget. There were forerunners to the Good Shepherd or Mission Services or Neighbor to Neighbor. I mean, there were forerunners, and they were one of those forerunners. Now, I don't want to get overly dramatic, but you know that there are major budget decisions that are going to happen this week, and I sometimes worry that anti-poverty plans might fall by the wayside when there is a crunch. What would you say to City Council right now? Because we know they have initiatives regarding affordable housing. We know they have plans to sell some properties to be able to afford better, newer, affordable housing properties in this city. But when we talk about 20%, 19% of our folks in Hamilton living day by day, what do you say to City Council at this moment in time when we know that on any given night there won't be enough beds for women who need them?
I say we need their help. We need their help for the shelter issue, and we also, from my own perspective, I welcome them to attend any of our meal services where you might see 130 to 150 people out there that potentially would not have had a dinner if they weren't able to access this service. So I think we need to continue to address this problem. As we all know, hydro rates are going up and up and up, and everybody is dealing with all the financial challenges that are involved with that. So I would strongly encourage them to help.
You're doing great work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in, Glenn.
Thank you for having us here. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Up next, we'll find out about a multi-group effort calling for people to consider how coexistence can be a blessing for Hamilton and the world.